So you think the tax plan, this tax plan is clever. Why?
Well, I think it's clever for the Republicans because I think in large part it focuses tax cuts on the Republican base and away from traditional Democratic voters. So if you look at the middle class tax cut, for example, pretty much washes except for a tax credit for children, which is $650 billion over 10 years.
Okay.
Parents tend to be Republicans. They skew Republicans away from single people who skew Democrat. So that skews that tax cut towards them. If you look at taxes for the rich, leaving aside the corporate taxes for a second, it's largely a wash, but it moves taxes from job creators in red states towards professionals in blue states, but the whole thing washes out. But again, their base tends to be job creators in red states.
But is this bill going to be a washout in terms of the impact on the economy, though? Because we had Maya McKinnis on, who was on with us earlier this week, who says she absolutely hates this bill, both versions of them, and says it's going to blow a huge hole into the deficit, $1.5 trillion, and the promises from these tax cuts are not going to be as beneficial as is being promised right now.
Yeah, so a couple things. If you looked at the middle class tax cut, $650 billion. Do I like it? No, it increases the deficit. It doesn't increase growth. The middle class already consumes more government services than they pay in taxes. It's just going to increase their demand for government services. Do I like that piece of it? No. When you look at the income taxes for richer, do I like shifting it from professionals to job creators? Yes. I don't think that blows a hole in the deficit, but it really comes down to the corporate tax rate.
How are the tax cuts going to increase the consumption of federal help by the middle class?
I'm only saying it will slowly over time, because if you're paying less for government services than you're receiving, you tend to want more government services. So you're going to vote for increases in government spending if your taxes don't go up proportionally. So what you'd like to keep the system in equilibrium is to charge people for the government services they consume, and then they would want to consume less government services because they cost a lot. I think the real issue is when you lower the corporate tax rate to 20%, what impact do we think it will have on growth, and how is that distributed to the rich versus the poor?
Right.
I think most serious conservative economists would say it's going to cost about $500 billion in tax revenues over the next 10 years. But a small change in capital investment can have a large impact on productivity and wages. So Tax Foundation, conservative, probably on the high side, estimates that it will increase corporate taxes by about $1 trillion over 10 years. I suspect the number's less than that. But I think you would say we have quite an antiquated, uncompetitive tax system when we try to tax people at 35% on the margin when the rest of the world's taxing at 15 to 25. We think we're going to collect those taxes, but guys like Apple are just moving their intellectual property over to Ireland, and they're paying Ireland 12%. In fact, Apple's paying them 0%,
right,
a couple percent, in order to avoid U.S. taxes. Well, at the very least, we ought to collect those taxes. And we should expect that that's going to bring some capital back to the United States.